Blood is the life, and those who feed on it bear the burden of eternity. From the shadows of ancient civilizations to the pages of Gothic novels, vampires have always been portrayed as predators of the night, thirsty for the scarlet liquid that pulses through our veins. But why this insatiable hunger? What is it about blood that keeps them alive, or rather, undead? Legends speak of creatures that roam the darkness, sucking the vitality of the living to prolong their cursed existence. Some say that blood restores their youth, others claim it preserves the soul they lost. But what if there is something more? What if, beyond the terror of ancient tales, there is a hidden truth behind this predatory instinct? Today, we will explore the dark secrets behind this vampiric need, from its mythological roots to scientific studies on blood consumption, occult beliefs, and disturbing reports of real-life vampires. If you stay until the end, you will understand that the vampiric desire for blood could be much more than mere fiction, and it may even be closer to reality than you think. Are you ready to face the unknown? Then follow me through the shadows, because this journey is just beginning. The fascination with blood is not exclusive to modern vampires. Since time immemorial, ancient civilizations associated this red liquid with life, the soul, and power. Peoples such as the Sumerians and Egyptians believed that blood carried the vital energy of the gods, using it in rituals to prolong youth and ensure supernatural strength. This view spread throughout history, shaping the archetype of the vampire as a being that feeds on the life force of others to secure its immortality. In medieval Europe, stories of demonic creatures sucking the blood of the living began to spread. In regions like the Balkans and Romania, the fear of vampires became so intense that corpses were exhumed to check for signs of undeadness. Accounts describe intact bodies, rosy skin, and even fresh blood on the lips of the dead, reinforcing the belief that they were feeding on the living to remain active even after death. The association of blood with immortality is also present in alchemy and the occult. Many esoteric texts speak of mystical substances capable of prolonging life, and in some secretive sects, blood consumption was practiced as a ritual to connect with higher forces. The idea that vampires suck blood to steal the vital essence of their victims echoes these ancient rituals, making the legend much more deeply rooted in human culture than it may appear at first glance. Moreover, there are historical records of figures who inspired the vampire mythology, such as Countess Elizabeth Báthory, who supposedly bathed in the blood of young women to maintain her youth, and Vlad the Impaler, whose thirst for blood on the battlefield made him synonymous with the legendary Dracula. But were these stories mere historical exaggerations, or was there a hidden truth behind these accounts? Although vampires are traditionally seen as mythical beings, the obsession with blood has roots that go beyond the supernatural. Scientific studies show that blood contains essential components for survival, such as iron, proteins, and plasma, as well as regenerative substances. There is evidence that blood transfusions can rejuvenate cells and slow down aging, a concept that curiously aligns with the idea that vampires drink blood to maintain their youth and vitality. Genetics might also offer clues about this behavior. There is a rare condition called porphyria, a blood disorder that can cause extreme sensitivity to light, skin discoloration, and even gum retraction, giving the appearance of sharp fangs. During the Middle Ages, many believed that people with this disease were vampires. To alleviate symptoms, some patients sought to consume animal blood, a habit that may have further influenced the vampire myth. In addition to genetics, there are records of individuals known as real vampires. These people believe they need to consume human or animal blood to maintain their physical and mental health. Modern vampire communities claim to have a condition called energy deficiency syndrome, stating that blood is the only source capable of restoring their well-being. Despite the lack of concrete scientific evidence, the phenomenon is studied within psychology and anthropology as a manifestation of a real symbolic or biological need. Another curious aspect is that some ancient cultures believed that blood contained a person's memory. Drinking the blood of a fallen enemy, for example, was seen as a way to absorb their strength and abilities. This idea resonates with literary vampires, who often gain the memories and even powers of their victims. Thus, the thirst for blood can be both a primitive instinct and a practice grounded in beliefs, and possibly in a physiological need, still not fully understood by modern science. Although belief in vampires is often relegated to folklore and fiction, some individuals throughout history have embodied this obsession in disturbing ways. One of the most notorious cases is that of Richard Chase, also known as the Vampire of Sacramento. In the 1970s, this serial killer terrorized California with brutal crimes involving the consumption of human blood, making him one of the most macabre examples of a real vampire. From a young age, Chase displayed profoundly disturbing behavior. He suffered from intense delusions and believed that his blood was deteriorating. Convinced that he needed fresh blood to survive, he began hunting small animals and drinking their blood, claiming that it kept him alive. Over time, his compulsion intensified, leading him to attack humans to obtain what he saw as his only source of vitality. Between 1977 and 1978, Chase committed a series of horrific crimes, randomly breaking into homes and attacking his victims in a ritualistic manner. His acts included mutilation and blood consumption, reinforcing the belief that he saw himself as a predatory vampire. When captured, psychiatrists diagnosed him with severe schizophrenia, and he claimed he needed to drink blood to prevent his heart from shrinking and disappearing. Chase's case became one of the most studied in criminology and forensic psychiatry, illustrating how the vampire myth can manifest in the minds of individuals with severe mental disorders. Cases like this demonstrate that while literary vampires are fictional creatures, humanity's obsession with blood is real and has led to extreme behaviors throughout history. But is this thirst for blood limited to isolated cases of mental disorders? Or is there something deeper and more ingrained in human psychology? As we delve further, we will see that the fascination with blood consumption is not restricted to horror stories, but extends to occult beliefs and ancient rituals. While the myth of vampires dominates popular imagination, there are dark accounts of secret societies that, throughout history, have used blood in occult rituals. For these orders, blood was not just a symbol, but a substance imbued with power, capable of strengthening bodies, sealing pacts, and even granting supernatural abilities. But how real were these practices? In Renaissance Europe, rumors spread about aristocratic groups consuming young blood in search of immortality. One of the most infamous examples is Countess Elizabeth Báthory, who allegedly bathed in the blood of virgins to maintain her youth. Although some historians question the veracity of these accounts, the belief in the vitality of blood was strong enough to fuel legends that persist to this day. By the 18th and 19th centuries, The quest for power through blood had reached influential occultist circles. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, one of the most famous esoteric societies of the time, studied the relationship between vital energy and substances like blood. Reports suggest that some practices involved using vital fluids in ceremonies intended to achieve higher states of consciousness or communicate with spiritual entities. In modern times, certain sects still believe in the power of blood to store psychic and spiritual energy. Some neo-pagan cults and real vampire groups claim that small amounts of blood can be ingested or used in rituals to strengthen the connection between members of the order. These practices, however clandestine, show that the obsession with blood goes beyond folklore and remains alive in hidden corners of society. Although the image of the European vampire has dominated popular culture, the idea of beings that feed on the blood of the living is universal. Civilizations around the world have their own legends about bloodthirsty creatures, each with unique and terrifying characteristics. This phenomenon suggests that the fear of vampirism may have been ingrained in the human subconscious for millennia. In Africa, there is the myth of the Asasabansum, a vampiric creature from the Ashanti mythology in Ghana. Unlike European vampires, it has iron teeth and hook-shaped legs, which it uses to hang from trees and ambush unsuspecting victims. In some tribes, belief in this being was so strong that rituals were performed to ward it off. In Asia, one of the most terrifying figures is the Penanggalan from Malaysia. Unlike the classic vampire, this entity is a floating head of a woman with internal organs hanging down and glowing like fire. The legend says these creatures feed on the blood of babies and pregnant women, making them a symbol of terror in rural villages. This myth may have been a way to explain unexplained deaths during childbirth or infant illnesses. In the Americas, the ancient Aztecs had the Cihuateteo, female spirits of women who died during childbirth and returned to suck the blood of living children. Meanwhile, in South America, some indigenous communities speak of the Pishtaco, a shadowy being that drains the fat and blood of its victims. These legends intertwine with accounts of brutal colonization, where foreigners were seen as predators feeding off native peoples. The diversity of these creatures worldwide proves that the fear of bloodsuckers is not exclusive to a single culture. The lingering question is, why did so many different civilizations, separated by time and space, develop such similar stories? Is it mere coincidence, or is there something deeper behind these beliefs? As science advances, particularly in genetics and biotechnology, theories emerge that go beyond mere mythology. The traditional idea of vampires as immortal blood predators could, in reality, have a more complex biological basis, involving a combination of genetic mutations and cellular processes that sustain human life in an extraordinary way. One promising area is research on telomere structures at the ends of chromosomes that are directly related to aging and longevity. Studies on human longevity are beginning to reveal how genetic mutations can affect cell regeneration and DNA repair over time. Some scientists believe that by manipulating or altering telomeres, it might be possible to slow down aging or even reverse its effects. This concept aligns with the idea that vampires, with their ability to live for centuries, could possess a genetic mutation that prevents cellular aging. If these mutations could activate a biological process of cellular regeneration, it would be possible for them to maintain a youthful and healthy appearance for unimaginable periods. Moreover, biotechnology is exploring the use of stem cells and gene therapies with the potential to rejuvenate organs and tissues. This concept is not far from the idea of a vampire needing to consume human blood to maintain vitality. Blood would serve as a rich source of stem cells and nutrients that, under certain conditions, could be used to stimulate regenerative processes. Instead of a dark ritual, the act of drinking blood could actually be a biological attempt to activate these regenerative responses in a body that would otherwise struggle to survive for so long. To better understand this concept, it is important to consider how the human body deals with cellular damage. During aging, cells gradually lose their ability to regenerate, resulting in organ deterioration and overall health decline. Some researchers suggest that a genetic mutation affecting cellular regeneration could theoretically provide biological immortality. In this sense, the need for blood would be a reflection of a constant requirement to replenish lost or damaged cells. Blood, full of essential nutrients, proteins, and stem cells, could function as a vital source for this process. Even more intriguingly, scientists are studying certain animal species, such as the jellyfish Turritopsis dohrnii, known as the immortal jellyfish, which possesses the rare ability to reverse its life cycle, effectively becoming immortal. Although this is a natural phenomenon, there are speculations about what would happen if humans had the ability to restart or extend their cellular cycles in a similar way. This would open the door to an entirely new perspective on vampirism. Rather than a supernatural curse, it could be a rare and unknown genetic adaptation that allows individuals to survive far beyond what is biologically expected, with the bloodthirst being merely the mechanism necessary to activate or sustain these processes. The truth is that as scientific discoveries continue to push the frontiers of biotechnology and genetics, the concept of vampirism may begin to be reevaluated. What was once a mythological figure could, in reality, be an example of extreme biological adaptation. Perhaps a case of a human species that discovered innovative ways to defy death and aging. In this way, the modern vampire could be reimagined as a scientific phenomenon rather than a creature of darkness, challenging the limitations of the human body through genetic and biological advancements once thought impossible. Of course, let's further expand this idea by exploring psychological aspects, the disorders involved, and how this can be interpreted as a symbolic expression of vampirism at the psychic level. Although vampires are often portrayed in movies and books as supernatural beings, an alternative interpretation suggests that the obsession with blood may actually be a complex and disturbing psychic expression. In modern psychology, this phenomenon is studied in relation to disorders such as Renfield's syndrome, a rare and extreme condition in which individuals exhibit an insatiable desire to consume blood. However, the urge to drink blood may be more than just a physical need or even an impulse for control. It could also be an attempt to fill a deep emotional void, a quest for power, or a desire for connection. Renfield syndrome, named after the character Renfield from Bram Stoker's Dracula, is a psychological disorder in which a person believes that blood possesses healing or revitalizing properties, something that can restore their energy or cure undiagnosed illnesses. For many of these individuals, drinking blood is not merely about seeking nutrients or physical sustenance, but is above all a ritual of power and control. Blood in this context, becomes a symbol of vital force, something that can be ingested to feel more complete, or even as a way to experience a connection with another person on a primal and visceral level. This compulsive desire is deeply rooted in psychological aspects of control, identity, and power. For some, consuming blood may be a way of asserting dominance over others, a means of feeling superior, or even a way to fill an emotional void. Blood is not just a physical substance, but also a metaphor that represents vitality, something beyond the tangible, such as energy, emotion, and even the soul of another. Thus, the act of drinking another person's blood can be interpreted as an attempt to absorb not just their physical life, but also their emotional aspects, experiences, and humanity. This need to control or consume another person can also reflect a power and dominance complex. In many cases, individuals suffering from this compulsion have unresolved issues related to control over their own lives. Their relationship with blood may therefore be an attempt to cope with feelings of helplessness, abandonment, or deep emotional trauma. For those experiencing this obsession, blood might symbolize a way to feel whole, as if drinking it could fill the internal gaps of a fragmented identity marked by insecurities and profound fears. On a symbolic level, the desire to consume blood can also be interpreted as a manifestation of the fear of death and the need to transcend it. Blood, often associated with life and death, represents a thin line between existence and the end. For those with psychological disorders related to vampirism, the act of drinking blood may be an unconscious attempt to cheat death, to avoid the disappearance of their identity, and to remain present, alive, and relevant. The obsession with blood, in this case, becomes an attempt to cope with the fear of finiteness and existential anguish. Additionally, psychological vampirism can be interpreted as a form of identity disorder. An individual who sees themselves drinking blood may not only be attempting to nourish themselves physically, but also seeking to reinvent themselves, adopting a vampiric persona as a way to detach from their original identity, which may be perceived as weak or incapable. This behavior may also reflect an ongoing struggle against the darker aspects of the human psyche: fear of death, repression of negative emotions, or the search for a greater meaning in life. Although rare, this type of psychological disorder reveals that vampirism can be more than just an obsession with blood. It is a reflection of internal needs and conflicts that manifest in extreme ways, symbolizing an individual's internal struggle with issues of power, control, identity, and in many cases, the desperate attempt to avoid the inevitability of death. Thus, vampirism becomes a metaphor for the constant battle against the darkest aspects of the human psyche, a reflection of how the mind can create alternative realities to cope with the complexities of life and existence. So, what do you think? Could the insatiable desire for blood truly have deep roots in our psyche, rather than being merely a biological need or a supernatural curse? Perhaps the real vampires of our society are not just lurking in the shadows, but living among us, battling their own internal demons. With all these psychological theories and explanations, could the obsession with blood simply be a desperate attempt to deal with death, fear, or even an identity crisis? Now, I want to hear from you. Leave your comment below and tell me what you think about this theory. Are today's vampires more like psychological patients than immortal beings? Or does blood truly possess some hidden power that science has yet to explain. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss more insane theories like this one.